Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this workshop on Introduction to ROS. A couple of things before we start. I've highlighted the word basic because what we'll be going through in this workshop will help you to get an understanding of what ROS is and how it works. If you want to start building robot projects using ROS, you need to go back and start exploring ROS on your own. I've added the necessary references at the end of this presentation, which you can use if you're interested to work with ROS after this workshop. We'll make sure that the content will be made available, both the presentation and the recording of this workshop on YouTube. A little bit about myself. My name is Vishwas Enes. I'm a 4th year computer science student. I've been working with ROS since my first year in PES, and I worked on multiple projects involving autonomous navigation and mapping for robots. So this is how the workshop is going to be. We'll first try to understand what ROS is and why we need it. We'll then try to define and understand the different concepts that are involved in ROS. We'll then take up a simple robot application as an example and see how we can use ROS to make robot perform different functions. After that, we'll look at a few techniques that we can use to debug our ROS project. And finally, like I said, I'll mention a couple of libraries and tools that you need to be familiar with in order to start building your different robot applications using ROS. So I'm sure everyone here asked this question, what is ROS? ROS actually stands for Robot Operating System, and the first thing that you need to know that it is not a full-fledged operating system. The best way to describe ROS is as a middleware that provides message passing services. Now there's two parts in that statement that we need to understand, middleware and message passing. We'll try to understand both of them in detail. Let's imagine we have a simple robot. It has 4 wheels to move around and a camera attached in the front. Now such a robot can have multiple applications running on its computer. For example, let's consider a control application that lets you drive the robot around using a joystick via Bluetooth, and a face detection application that uses the camera feed to identify people. Now each of these applications require access to different hardware components on the robot. The control application will use Bluetooth and the motor driver. The face detection application will use the camera. The function of a middleware is to sit between the applications and the components and provide a way for the application to send or receive data from the components. The advantage of having such a middleware is that the application need not worry about what type of components are used. So for example, if you change the type of the camera you are using, the middleware will handle all the associated software changes and provide the image in the required format to the application. The middleware also handles situations where two different applications need access to the same component's data. So in short, a middleware acts like a bridge between applications and components. This is somewhat similar to the tasks that operating systems perform, but operating systems like Linux and Windows are much more complex and have many other tasks that they need to perform. Whereas ROS only does a few things in a simple manner, which is why it can't be considered a full-fledged operating system. Now that we understand what a middleware does, we'll look at a scenario which will explain why ROS is actually required and why it was created in the first place. So we have 4 students, each from a different college. Student A works on control systems, meaning he or she is really good with controlling a robot, like writing programs to fly a drone steadily or make a wheeled robot follow a predetermined path precisely. Student B works on making the robot navigate on its own using motion planning and mapping algorithms. Student C is good with machine learning based applications, whereas student D works on computer vision related applications. Now each of these students would have worked separately on projects and would have written different programs that perform specific tasks in which the students specialize. Now assume that they then get introduced to each other and want to form a team to build some kind of a robot software. They come up with an idea, and when they start implementing it, they realize that the programs they had individually written are not working when put together in a single system. This happens because they were working when they were working in their own colleges, they used different conventions, different types of robots, and different types of data. So when two programs written by different students talk to each other, they can't make sense of the data that's coming from the other. Now they all have to sit down again and write down specific conventions and rules in which these programs will communicate, and then change their program to follow these rules, which is very time consuming. Now imagine they somehow do all that, build a good software stack for a robot, and want to provide it to different organizations. Now each of those organizations will have their own robot hardware, their own rules and conventions, so the whole problem repeats again. This is where ROS steps in, and what it does is it defines the set of rules in which the programs are supposed to talk to each other and act as a middleman that tries to establish this connection and facilitate communication between multiple programs. Now, one may ask, how different is it from any of the other communication protocols that the students or the companies were using? Isn't it just going to be one more of the many already available middleware programs, and therefore adding more to the problem and rather than solving it? The reason why that did not happen is because the creators of ROS did not stop at just creating a communication protocol. They converted it into an open source project, and they created a community where people from different places and fields can come together and develop solutions for robotics. ROS became somewhat of a central hub for all open source robotics projects, and people would start sharing their programs that use ROS to communicate, which led to reuse of algorithms. All these factors helped ROS become the de facto standard in developing robot projects, both in academia as well as industry. This image that ROS put up on its website answers our question pretty neatly. ROS is basically a combination of all the plumbing, which is the basic communication software, the tools that help robotics research and development, the capabilities or the software that helps robot perform different tasks, and the ecosystem of worldwide contributors backing the project. In fact, Red Hat released a 5-part documentary on the history of ROS named How to Start a Robot Revolution. It's an interesting watch, and it talks about how the developers of ROS helped create this huge open source robotics community. So I guess that pretty much answers any doubts regarding what ROS does and why it was created in the first place. Like I said, the core functionality of ROS is to facilitate communication between different programs. Let's now take a look at how ROS actually implements this. The example of a simple robot with a control and face detection application can be used to understand different concepts in ROS. Each of this application in a robot is actually implemented as a separate program that runs on the onboard computer. That has a specific name in ROS called as nodes. A node is basically a process or a program in simple terms that has a specific task to perform. It could be a C++ or a Python program that runs on a Raspberry Pi, or even an Arduino program running on your favorite Arduino board. So any ROS based software is basically a set of different nodes that perform specific tasks and talk to each other by passing around messages. That brings us to the second concept, ROS messages. A ROS message is basically a data structure with different data types and its corresponding data. The data type can either be simple ones like integer, floating point, or strings, or they can be a combination of simple types similar to how structs are used in the C programming language. A ROS message should be defined before compiling a ROS project. We will actually see how to define a ROS message in the upcoming slides. So the next concept is a topic, which is basically a communication channel for different nodes to talk to each other. A topic is defined by a unique name and a message type. This means that you can only send a single type of message through a particular topic. The technique used by ROS to pass messages around to different nodes is called the publish and subscribe method. In this method, a node can either push a message into a topic, which is known as publishing a message, or it can subscribe to a topic and wait for a message to arrive on that particular topic. In ROS, a node can publish or subscribe to multiple topics, and a single topic can have multiple publisher or subscriber nodes connected to it. This produces a decoupled architecture, which means that each ROS node is only aware of the topics that it has to publish or subscribe to, and it does not care about any other nodes that are present in the system. This allows us to easily add in or remove nodes without affecting the existing system. Now, the concept of having a dedicated topic as a channel for communication between two nodes is efficient if the nodes message constantly. However, if the dedicated channel has to be open for communication between two nodes where the communication is really rare, such a implementation is not optimal. For such use cases, ROS uses a different technique called a service. Instead of using the publish and subscribe method, a service is based on the request reply method, where a ROS node can request another ROS node to perform a certain task and then return some reply. This is similar to a function call that we use while writing programs. Similar to a topic, a service is defined by a unique name and a pair of message types. The pair of message types that a service uses for its request and reply must be mentioned before compiling the ROS project, and we will learn how to do that in the upcoming slides. Parameters are globally accessible data that is shared across all nodes. It is similar to the global variables that are used in programs, which can be accessed by any function of the program. Parameters are often used to control the behavior of an algorithm, which gives users control over the entire robot system. This image shows the network of ROS nodes that our example application might have. The task of the motor node at the bottom is to receive the PWM signals from the control node and make sure that the PWM signals are applied to the motors. The camera node reads the images from the connected camera and passes the data to the face detection node. The task of the control node is to process the Bluetooth signals and produce the required PWM signals to control the robot properly. The face detection node uses the images and generates ID for each of the face that it detects. It also uses a service to return a required number of recently detected face IDs. To facilitate all this communication, appropriate message types like image, PWM, Bluetooth, and a service with an integer request and a string array reply needs to be created. Now that we have an understanding of how ROS works, we'll look at what needs to be done to set up your first robot project. The first step is to install ROS on your system. ROS releases multiple versions, and it usually aligns to the different versions of the Ubuntu operating system. For example, ROS Kinetic is recommended for Ubuntu 16.04, Melodic for 18.04, and Noetic for 20.04. Although ROS tries to support other operating systems, it is better to go with Ubuntu while starting out with ROS for the first time, because the errors that might appear during setup will be minimal, and also a lot of support is available in the forums if you come across any errors. After installation, we need to create a folder in our system inside which all the ROS based projects will be put. This base directory is called as the ROS workspace. A ROS package is basically a collection of all the nodes, data, and other files required for a single robot project. So all the software for a single robot project can be organized into a ROS package, and multiple ROS packages can be put into a ROS workspace. This shows an example view of a ROS package inside a ROS workspace. A package usually has 4 main folders. The SRC folders contains all the source code for the different ROS nodes that are required for that project. The message folder contains the definitions of required message types. Similarly, the SRV folder contains definitions of required service types. The param folder usually holds all the required parameters in the form of a YAML file. There is also 2 important files that are present in all ROS packages. Package.xml is a file that contains metadata like the package name, version, and the package dependencies. This file is useful when contributing ROS packages to the community, because the information about the package can be easily conveyed. CMakeLists.txt is an input file for the CMake tool. CMake helps in automating the compilation and the testing of ROS packages. Here we have the package structure for the example application we were discussing. This SRC folder contains the 2 programs for the face detection and the control nodes. The message folder contains 3 files, each for a type of message that's required for the project. The SRV folder contains a file that defines the message types for the face detection service that we talked about. We also have a parameter file which we will use to mention a file name for logging some data. We'll now see how each of the files from our example application is structured. The PWM file defines the message structure required for passing a message about the PWM signals to both the left and the right wheel motors. Hence, it contains 2 32-bit integers called left PWM and right PWM. The image message is structured similarly, with 2 integers to denote the length and height of the image in terms of the number of pixels, and a string to denote the type of the image. A few examples of types could be RGB or grayscale. Finally, a one-dimensional integer array is used to store the image data. A point to note here is that ROS messages do not handle multi-dimensional arrays. So such arrays can be expanded to put all the data in a continuous single-dimension array and later reconstructed on the receiving end, or we can use multiple message types to form complex structures. The service file has a similar structure to define the message types. However, the request and the reply messages are separated using a separator. Hence, the detected faces service requires an integer in the request, denoting the number of face IDs recently detected that has to be returned, and the response is an array of strings containing the face IDs. The structure of the YAML file used to store the parameter is to have a parameter name and the value separated by a colon. You can have multiple parameters, each of them defined in a single line. The value that a parameter can have is restricted to simple data types such as integers, floating point values, and strings. This is the skeleton code written in Python for the two nodes that our example robot requires. Since the task of the control node is to receive Bluetooth signals and calculate the required motor PWM, it imports two messages to do this. This line is used to initialize a node with a unique name. It is important to note that if two nodes are initialized with the same name, the node that starts second will not be able to run. We then make the node subscribe to a topic named control data, and we pass the message type and a callback function. We also make the node a publisher to motor PWM so that it can publish the calculated PWM signals. The callback function will be executed whenever a message is published by some node to that particular topic. We can access that published message in the callback function and perform whatever processing is required. We then publish the required PWM message with the publisher variable. The face detection node has a similar structure for publishing and subscribing data. However, we can see that the name of the log file from the parameters is in this line. We also pass a default value along with it, which will be used in case the parameter has not been defined. We also set up a service in this line for which a request and a response type are imported over here. Similar to a subscriber, we pass a callback function which will be executed whenever the getFaceIDs service is called. The callback function then has to return a response message after performing some kind of processing. This slide shows the flow of how you can build your first ROS project. You first need to create a workspace directory in which you can add or create the required packages. The catkin create package command can be used to create a skeleton package in which the basic files and folders are present, which you can later edit to add the required nodes and other files. You can also clone a ROS package from GitHub if required. In both cases, you need to make sure that all the dependencies are present. The workspace can then be built using the catkin make command. When this command is executed, the packages are visited based on the dependency order, and the source code in each package along with the message and the service types are all compiled. The steps to be performed during compilation are usually mentioned in the cmakelist file. After successfully building a workspace, you can run the required node using the ROS run command, followed by the package name and the node name. Now we all know that the robot doesn't start working the first time we run it. We often end up having to debug the whole system and fix many issues. These are a few command line tools that can help you understand what is happening in ROS during runtime. RQT Graph is a visualization tool that provides a graph of all the nodes present in the system and how they are connected. The graph it provides looks something like the image on the right. Nodes are represented as circles and the topics that are used to communicate are represented as rectangles. The direction of the arrow shows which node published to a certain topic and which node subscribes to a topic. This tool is helpful to figure out all the errors in communication between nodes in a large system. The ROS node command can be used to list all the nodes present in the system and to get details regarding a particular node. Similarly, the ROS topic can list and provide details of different topics that are present in the system. It can also be used to publish a message manually to a topic through the terminal or print the messages that are sent to a topic. This can help you figure out whether the right data is being sent through the topics. The ROS service command has similar options to list and view all the details of the services. You can also call a service from the terminal by passing the service name and a request message. The reply will be printed out in the terminal itself. We'll now look at a few commonly used tools and libraries. Each of these topics are too big to be explained in detail in the workshop. Hence, I will be providing small introductions to each of them, and the links required to read about them further are mentioned over here. Launch files are files that are written to launch multiple nodes together. This helps simplify the task of starting up a huge system with many nodes, which cannot be done using the ROS run command to start each node manually. The file can be written and saved under the launch directory in a package and can be called using the ROS launch command. ROSBag is a tool used to record all the data that is passed around in the ROS system. When started, it records all the ROS messages passed around in different topics and saves them to a bag file. This bag file can later be played back to get the same ROS messages in the same order. This helps with data collection, which can later be used to test out different algorithms. TF is a ROS package that is used to handle transformations between reference frames. This package is important because we often deal with multiple frames of reference due to multiple parts being used in a robot or due to multiple robots working together. TF helps perform the calculation required to change the frame of reference between two frames in a simple manner. Gazebo is a widely used robot simulator in the ROS community. You can create robot designs using your favorite CAD software and then import these designs to Gazebo and add required sensors and motors to it. You can then publish the sensor data as ROS messages and then test your algorithms using the simulation. UIDF files are used to define the structure of a robot in ROS. You can import different parts designed in CAD and then form the required robot structure by mentioning how each part fits into the robot using these UIDF files. These files are then in turn given as the input to different programs such as the Gazebo simulator. RViz is a widely used data visualizer in ROS. RViz shows the view of what the robot perceives by visualizing different sensor data that is generated either by the Gazebo simulator or by real robots. Like I mentioned before, you need to read more about ROS to understand about its working in detail and start using ROS in complex robot projects. ROS Wiki is a website maintained by the ROS community. It contains multiple tutorials at beginner, intermediate and advanced levels that you can try out to get a deeper understanding of how ROS works. The Construct is a great YouTube channel that makes many video series on how to develop robots using ROS. They also have their own website where you can find courses related to ROS development. ROS 2 is the second version of ROS, which has many fundamental changes and focuses more on robust software for industrial deployment. The main features of ROS 2 is that it tries to address real-time support, security, multi-robot system support, and capability of running on multiple operating systems. I would suggest starting out with ROS initially to get a good grip on different concepts and the ROS environment, and later on moving to ROS 2 while developing robots for important projects such as your final year project. With that, we come to the end of the workshop. If you have any doubts related to ROS, you can ask them now. Thank you.